Let's talk about stimulus, and let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on it. Should they send out more stimulus checks, as a lot of people were waiting for that unfulfilled promise by the Biden administration, or should we not? Because we're also having some pretty record high inflation, interest rates are high, and well, we're going to be sharing with you some of the impacts of stimulus, but not just stimulus checks, all stimulus on our economy, and some are saying this is quite unexpected. As take a look at this article, literally just came out today with the data, how stimulus checks, student loan deferrals, and other unexpected income have impacted the economy. Now, we're going to be going through this and covering all the stimulus provisions. They're going to give the amounts, the details, the numbers for you, and also, as I've let you know here on the channel, there is still leftover funds from the stimulus packages that we received during the pandemic. There's roughly about $300 billion left over, still just sitting there, which literally is enough to send out that first $1,200 stimulus check to everybody in the nation. Now, let me know your thoughts on this. And also, as I mentioned, not just stimulus checks, but also unemployment. What about Social Security bump ups? All of these things and promises that were made that are still yet to come to fruition. Do you think they're going to come to fruition? Or do you think they're just going to keep kicking the can down the road? Well, I can let you know here on the channel my personal opinion. I might be wrong. Stimulus checks for the pandemic are looking highly unlikely. However, we are potentially looking at a recession, we're hearing. Things are not looking good for the economy. Now, Biden has announced his Bidenomics, and he's saying he's going to be shifting the economy right before we hit these elections. But do you think it's going to save us, or are we going to economic hardships? And if we are, they're saying a recession or even a depression would definitely spark more stimulus checks. We've had them in the past. They're saying they're going to be coming back again, and we will see. Now, as I mentioned, Social Security, that is something that must be addressed, and I've got some more updates coming for you today, so keep an eye out on that, as we've heard 2023 is going to be the year of Social Security reform because time is running out. So stick around to the end for some updates on that. But with that being said, you guys, let's dive into this article about stimulus checks, the impacts of the economy, and how things are going, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now, before we dive in, do me a quick favor, smash the like button if you appreciate the updates, hit subscribe to stay up to date, and with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so first up, link in the description below to this article that just came out today, as I mentioned, as they're going to give us all the numbers and the data on stimulus. Now, this article says the roughly $5 trillion in COVID-19 stimulus spending was one of the boldest experiments in the history of America's social safety net. Proponents of the legislation that authorized the aid said an immediate and massive outpouring of cash was necessary to keep the economy afloat during one of the most destructive public health crises in this modern era. And that, of course, was that pandemic that hit that pretty much shut things down for about 3 years. Its detractors called it a waste of money that would bury the country in debt, foster a culture of dependence, trigger steep inflation, and make a recession more likely. Now, let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with that statement? Are we seeing this come to fruition? Is our country now buried in debt? Well, I think the answer to that, a lot of people are thinking, is yes. Has it fostered a culture of dependence? Let me know your opinion. Are people now dependent on money? And maybe that's not necessarily mentality, but it's just a fact as a result of what's taken place as inflation's out of control and people need that money. Some people can't work, don't have the ability to, and they literally are depending on these finances. And also they're saying it's triggered steep inflation, and we're pretty much at a 40-year high, and now we're looking at a recession as the Federal Reserve is increasing those interest rates. Actually sounds like a lot of this has come to pass. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now, the opposing sides still disagree on the wisdom of post-pandemic stimulus spending. But one thing is not for debate, and that is its impacts on individuals, households, and the economy as a whole has been as massive as its price tag, as they're saying. It has helped out the needy among us, the low income. Now, a flood of cash supported but also overheated the economy. The pandemic stimulus package had macroeconomic effects that impacted everything from the stock market and the nation's GDP to unemployment and inflation. Business owners used public cash to keep their doors open. The U.S. GDP plummeted by 32.9% in the second quarter of 2020, the fastest, steepest economic decline in American history, including the Great Depression. So this was even worse and faster as businesses shuttered and demand cratered. Unemployment peaked at 14.7%, a post-depression high. The American economy endured, however, thanks to $1.7 trillion in government stimulus spending for business recovery, including, and here's the list of all of the business spending: the Paycheck Protection Program, or the PPP, of $835 billion, Economic Injury Disaster Loans, or EIDLs, of $349 billion, loosened limits on business losses of $193 billion, delays of employer payroll taxes of $85 billion, airlines $80 billion, restaurants $29 billion, EIDL advances $27 billion, employee retention payroll tax credits $26 billion, Federal Reserve loans $25 billion, interest deductions $13 billion, paid leave credit $11 billion, miscellaneous tax breaks $9 billion. Now, according to the New York Times, hundreds of thousands of business owners who would have been doomed without the spending kept their doors open. More than 9 million businesses, most with fewer than 500 employees, received PPP loans. The National Restaurant Association estimated that the funds saved 900,000 service industry jobs alone in the end, and the economy regained 90% of the 22 million jobs that it lost in the early weeks of the pandemic. But in terms of success, the results were mixed. The government spent $4.13 in public funds for every dollar in lost wages it prevented. Now, a flood of unexpected income contributed to inflation. Inflation peaked at 9.1% in June of 2022, which was the highest rate in 40 years. Gas topped $5 per gallon for the first time in history, and the price of everything from eggs to energy skyrocketed, straining budgets and wiping out household savings. Now, on a macroeconomic level, there's a concern about inflation, said the professor of finance and economics at the City University of New York. As we pump more money into the economy, there's a risk that prices might rise and our nation's debt could increase. A small business owner that I advised saw an unusual surge in demand during the stimulus disbursement periods, but also had to deal with increased prices for supplies, a typical sign of inflation. Midterm election ads placed the blame solely on President Biden's feet because of his administration's massive stimulus spending. But according to factcheck.org, that doesn't tell the whole story. While the American Rescue Plan's $1.9 trillion in cash that was injected certainly contributed to a spike in demand that sent prices higher, a St. Louis Fed report found that stimulus payments likely accounted for only 2.6 percentage points of the peak inflation rate. So they're saying that all of the stimulus did contribute. However, the stimulus checks themselves had a very small portion. But the trade-off was that the cash infusion prevented millions of households from suffering a fate much worse than rising prices. Payments kept families afloat and prevented economic collapse. A fast and massive flood of direct payments gave households the power to use their dollars where they needed them the most. Suddenly, America was a country of households flush with cash. The most direct and immediate impact of the pandemic stimulus came from the $1.8 trillion paid to individuals and families, which included the following. There was $817 billion in stimulus checks. That covers all three of the checks. And so as I've let you know that there is still $300 billion sitting there, we still could have that fourth check that we were promised by the Biden administration. However, it would not equate to $2,000. Right now, we roughly could do about a $1,200 check. Unemployment benefits, $678 billion went out for unemployment expansion, extension, and enhancement. You'll remember the FPUC boosts, the PUA, and the PEUC extensions. Expanded child tax credits, those monthly direct payments to parents, which we're hearing, if anything comes back, it likely will be the child tax credits. SNAP and other food assistance of $71 billion. Delayed student loan payments of $39 billion, which I've let you know is going to be coming to an end. Child care block grants of $28 billion. Child care provider grants of $24 billion. Retirement plan rules $14 billion. And other tax breaks and miscellaneous spending $34 billion. Now, the first round of payments was those $1,200, $600 per child. This article says $500. The second delivered $600 each, and the third round was $1,400 per adult and child. Nearly 150 million households received direct payments or stimulus checks. The fired and furloughed masses received $600 per week on top of their standard unemployment benefits that they collected from their states. Food stamp recipients had at least $95 more per month to spend on groceries. And for the average American, the impact was immediate and dramatic. As they're saying, it helped out millions of Americans. With more money in their pockets, individuals could purchase essential goods and services, pay off debts, or even invest, thereby keeping the economy afloat. Now, those with the least ended up benefiting the most. The University of Michigan study found that the relief from material hardship was evident across the income spectrum, but for low-income households, the stimulus packages were the greatest anti-poverty program in modern history. Stimulus payments and student loan deferrals have undoubtedly provided an economic lifeline for many households, especially those hardest hit by the pandemic's financial fallout. Food insecurities fell by more than 40%. Financial instability fell by more than 45%. The stimulus prevented 5.2 million children from going hungry. The sudden ageism of financial stress led to the dramatic drop in depression and other mental health issues. The Census Bureau estimated that stimulus spending lifted 45.4 million people out of poverty in 2021 on top of 29.6 million in 2020. Now, savings accounts swelled until inflation robbed them. And this is the issue here, is inflation with the stimulus. Now, let me know your thoughts. Now, we just read stimulus checks by themselves did not cause massive amounts of inflation, but all of the spending altogether, we're hearing, did the trick along with other elements as well. Now, the Peterson Foundation research shows that people spent their stimulus payments differently during each of the three rounds. The first, from the CARES Act, came at the start of the crisis during the peak unemployment. Cash-strapped recipients spent 74% of it right away on household necessities, catching up with bills, repairing cars, buying food, paying rent. The second round saw a shift in paying down debts. By the time the third round came around, people had the luxury to save. So they're saying the first one was absolutely necessary, and a lot of people are saying that third one maybe not so much, and they banked nearly $1 in three. Now, the check size, coupled with the reduced spending opportunities during lockdowns, resulted in a similar or even smaller spending response compared to previous rebate checks. Now, the results was an unprecedented $2.1 trillion worth of accumulated excessive savings. For many, it was more money than they had ever had in their lives, but it didn't last very long. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, Americans began drawing down their savings accounts by an average of $34 billion per month from September through December of 2021. Then searing inflation took its toll, and the average monthly drawdown soared to $100 billion per month as inflation cooled, and the national savings drawdown cooled with it. And in the first quarter of 2023, Americans were draining their once mighty savings by $85 billion per month. The economic landscape in the post-pandemic era has been fascinating and complex, influenced significantly by a variety of factors, including stimulus payments, student loan deferrals, and other sources of unexpected income. The post-pandemic era has shown us the powerful tools at our disposal for managing economic downturns. So, like we've heard before, stimulus checks have happened in the past. They are very likely to happen here in the future. It all is contingent upon the state of the economy. However, it has also underlined the need for more targeted approaches and technological investments to ensure that these tools are effectively deployed. But to end on an optimistic note, one thing is clear. The lessons that we've learned now will undoubtedly shape our future responses, making us better equipped to navigate such economic storms. So we will see if there's going to be a need for more stimulus checks as we're waiting to see what unfolds with our economy, as people are talking about a recession, depression, and we're also hearing that Biden is coming out talking about Bidenomics. And let me know your thoughts. We're hearing a lot of people are not on board, but some are saying, no, this might fix things so that way we don't have a devastating downfall. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now, in addition to that, there are still state, city, and county checks going out. Check out my website, www.reliefroadmap.com, for a comprehensive list of over 100 different stimulus checks. And also, as I mentioned, Social Security. This is the year of reform, and there is a lot taking place, and I've actually got an update coming out for you later today on that. But to get the latest, be sure to check out this video right here next on Social Security. But with that being said, you guys, I will keep you up to date on everything as it unfolds with our economy, stimulus, Social Security, so you know the latest. But with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.